the 9th web development lesson for Codivate. We're going to be going over positioning and more styling. So today we're going to be learning about the position property, and there are different values for position, which is static, relative, fixed, and absolute. You're going to probably see relative and absolute it's fairly common in web development. Static is usually the default value, so if you don't really specify the position, it's gonna default to static. So yeah, let's get on. Position static. So when an element exists with the natural flow of the page, then the position is static. So for example, if you write one paragraph and then add an image, the image will be placed below the paragraph, just like normally. And if we have box B and add a background color to 0, color to F or white, background color to black, and position to static, nothing really changes in our HTML page, and that's because the position static value is set by default. So if you don't really declare position static in our container, then it's going to be the same thing. So you don't technically have to specify position static if you don't really want to. It is a little bit redundant, but it is there. Position relative. So this value allows you to move an element up, left, right, or down relative to its original position. And setting the left property will move it to the right, and setting the right property will move it down as shown. So if you had left 30 pixels, it's going to take the leftmost or it's going to take the left and then move it 30 pixels over. For top 30 pixels, it's going to take if this is box B, right? Left 30 pixels will add like 30 pixels over here, which in turn moves it to the right, and then top 30 pixels will move it downwards, and this is going to be in all, it's going to be positioned 30 pixels down and 30 pixels to the right. So it's a little bit like the opposite of what you would think. So if you wanted it to move to the right, you would specify the left value. If you wanted it to move down, you would specify the top value. Another thing that you can do is specify negative values. So if you really wanted it to go to the left and specify it left, you can have negative 30 pixels and then it would go in the opposite direction, which I guess would be left. Position fixed. So the fixed value of the position property allows the item to stay in the same place even though the user is scrolling on the screen. So sometimes people create a fixed navigation menu so that you can always click on the links even if you scroll to the bottom of the page. So if you try adding position fixed, right, a lot of the times you add this to nav bars, if you keep scrolling on the page, it's still going to stay there on our screen, and it's really helpful, especially for like navigation bars. A lot of websites just have nav links at like fixed, and so no matter how much you scroll like down on the screen, it's always there for you. So you can have position fixed as one of your position values. So this is kind of a small exercise for you guys. You can add position fixed to your navigation bar, and then add the declaration in your nav link selector. So in your div that contains all of the smaller elements, you can add position fixed to that. Refresh your browser, and if you scroll down, you can see that the navigation bar will stay in the same location since we added the position fixed declaration in our navigation bar. And can you see any other changes, or do you notice any other changes? Let's find out. As you can see, adding position fixed has altered the width of our navigation bar, and this is because adding this property will cause the bar to be positioned relative to the viewport instead of relative to the body. And since the viewport has no margins, it decreases the size of our box. So this is really important because creating a fixed navigation bar is really, really popular. So make sure to add the width 100% property in order for the navigation bar to be 100% of its width, and it's very, very helpful. So create a fixed navigation bar as much as you want, and it's really helpful. So yeah. Background image. So instead of having a weird color as our background image, we can use a background image from a website or from the internet to use on our website. So first, let's add a div around our header. We can have a class of image for our background image, and you can go to this website here. It allows you to use like images from the internet freely, and it's super helpful. So you can go choose an image. You can copy like the image address if you want, like if you wanted to choose this one, or you can download it depending on what size you want. I usually do medium or small. Or you can just right click on the image, press copy image address, and then paste it in your code. So now that we have our image, we can embed our image using CSS. So let's explore some more properties that we use. So over here, we specify the background image. We can enter in a file path relative a file path kind of that guides us to where the image is located in our file system or file explorer. We added position relative, and we add background position center that centers the background image. Background repeat, no repeat. So if the image is too small, it's automatically set to repeat over and over again. So we have to set that value to no repeat. Background size is cover, so it has to cover the whole screen. Min height 400 pixels, ZIndex, we're going to talk about that later, and opacity 0.7. So this is really important if you want to have a background image to include these kind of basic set values. And yeah, obviously the opacity, that's pretty much up to you. The height is up to you, but having cover, no repeat, center for your background position, repeat, and size values, those are also pretty crucial. So use these to improve the design of your website. So the ZIndex property specifies the order in which items are placed when they're being overlapped. So for example, if we set the ZIndex of a blue box to 1 and the ZIndex of a black box to -1, the items with a higher ZIndex will appear on top. So over here, since we had a ZIndex of -1, that means the background image will be like below everything else. So you can place text on top of the image and you can see it. So the background image is actually in the background, not in the foreground. So in our image selector, we already added a ZIndex of -1, as you can see here, right? And now let's go to the navigation bar and set the ZIndex to +1, and so that we can see the background image is behind the navigation bar. So now let's cover shadows. So shadows are kind of these like small little details that just add a little bit more to your website. So text shadows applies a shadow to text. Over here you can see that this refers to the horizontal shadow, my bad. Vertical shadow, this is a blur, and that's the color of the shadow. So over here you can see that it's 5 pixels towards the right. The shadow is 5 pixels towards the right, 5 pixels downwards. There's a kind of a blur. So 5 pixels of blur, you can obviously omit this value, and if you don't want any blur, and the color of the shadow, which can be anything you want. If you want some opacity to your shadow, then I suggest adding a RGBA value instead. So there's another one where you can have a box shadow, and it's a little bit different. You apply it to a container element or a block level element. It's pretty much the same process. You can specify a different color, just use the word box shadow. You can also use negative values to make it go the other side. And also you can add on shadows, so you can have like multiple shadows on something. So try and experiment with different shadows. Try adding the word inset and seeing what happens when you put inset in your shadow. So inset, -5px, -5px, 10px, and then your color. CSS grid view. So grid view separates our viewport into 12 columns. Like here, you can see that there's 12 columns, and we can make it this makes it a lot easier to put elements on a page. You can organize it, create layouts. It's super helpful when you're kind of planning out ideas, and I completely recommend that you guys use these types of, use grid view, use flexbox, use different structures to make interesting layouts. So let's find out what this is. So this grayout has 100% width and 12 columns, and you can assign it widths to columns to create a layout on your page. So as you can see here, if we had this element, if this was like a nav bar, we can set it a width to 100% because it spans 100% of the page. Over here, this can take this takes 3 columns out of the 12, so this would be 3 over 12, which is 25%. And this is kind of the same thing. So this is kind of applying here. So column 1, which means like the container or the element spans 1 column, so just one of these, this is going to be 8.33%. Column 2, which means 2 columns, will be 16.66, etc. If you guys don't want to do the calculations in your head, I suggest like having this like next to you or copied in your code whenever you want to use CSS grid view. Here are some practice problems for you to do. They're super helpful. Make sure to explore CSS, make sure to explore HTML, and see all the different things you can do with shadows, background images, positioning, and the thing is about web development is that if you don't explore, you'll never be able to want to learn more. You'll never want to go out there and learn about new stuff. So do the practice problems, explore more, ask questions in the Discord server, and that's why we're here. So yeah. Again, if you have any questions, email team@codivate.org, ask in the Discord server, and that's it for today's lesson. I'll see you in the next one.